This conference will now be recorded.
So last week we spoke about the overview of family-centered coaching. We discussed how we found out about the approach, what the coach is, and the steps to take to get into the family-centered coaching mindset. We spoke about family-centered coaching and moving towards this practice agency-wide, and how the participants have the answers, and this truly does really believing that they do have their own answers. And this is going to be a shift in the way we do work and how we work with our participants and supporting them to find the solutions to their own challenges. Does anybody have any questions so far about family-centered coaching? It's a pretty new topic. Is anybody excited about using this case management model? I see some head nods. It really is exciting. So I would like you guys to open up what we had sent you, the materials, which is the Ready to Coach Today checklist. Liz had sent it out last Friday, but if you aren't able to pull it up, that's okay as well. Liz will pull it up throughout this training. We just want you guys to understand and follow along with us as we teach you about today's lesson.
So as Hilary stated, this week we're going to be going over the engagement process for family-centered coaching, which can be broken down into 5 separate steps. Obviously today we're going to focus on step 1, which is prepare for the meeting. It's a pretty straightforward training. So we're going to be focusing on the rest of the steps moving forward through each training. So step 2, build the relationship. Step 3, focus our work. Step 4, assess what role to play. And step 5, plan, do, review, which also brings support and accountability into play. So as I said, today we're going to be focusing on step 1, which is prepare for the meeting. So I would like to open it up and get someone to volunteer and answer here of how do you get ready for a meeting currently with a participant or a family? Anybody?
So one of the roles that I play with the agency is I provide a termination of parental rights consultation service to birth parents that are preparing for their hearing with regard to the termination of parental rights. So what it's definitely a shift now with COVID, as I'm not meeting with these individuals in person. So I typically do a phone call with them prior when we're scheduling that consultation meeting. I give them a little bit of background on myself and my history in providing this service. And I do let them know that this can be an emotional session for them. So I try to help prepare them for that. In the past, when I would meet with people in person, make sure I had a bottle of water in the room for them, tissues available at the conference table, and all distractions put aside. I would have, my copy of their petition so that we could reference that and go over the grounds for termination. But I tried to make it a environment that is receptive to their emotional response to the meeting while removing any distractions that could come up. I don't have my cell phone in there. I have the phone turned down in the room. And again, just trying to make it a comfortable space for them.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. And we're going to be touching on a lot of those that you offered today as we go through this training.
So the main resource for step 1 is the Ready to Coach Today checklist. This tool helps you get focused, prepare for the meeting, and helps you get into that family-centered coaching mindset. We're going to be going over each part of the checklist today, and if you guys ever have any questions or comments, you can feel free to stop us. So when we went through the training, we had learned some tips on how to prepare for a meeting. Like if your mind's racing, to jot down some things either by hand or an email draft. Sometimes our mind is in a million different places at once. I can't say I'm not guilty of that. Sometimes we're thinking about the email we forgot to respond to, or the deadline that's coming up, or even what's for dinner later. But if you find yourself in this situation, we just want you to write a little to-do list to help you clear your mind and focus on the meeting with your participant. And some people do find it very helpful to do deep deep breathing exercises to get their mind clear. So I'm just going to open this up to the group. So what are some ways to help you clear your mind and distractions prior to the meeting?
I can add not about just clearing the mind, because I think we all multitask as much as we have to. But I know that when I'm in meetings and, you know, have gone to meetings, and it's just that taking a little bit of time before you're, especially if you're only meeting with one person, but to take time to review, you know, if it's a case file, but that you're, you know, you definitely have the information at hand. And I found that even in our, like, you know, we do a lot of team meetings in different groups, and it's to take that time afterwards and reflect on the meeting, and if there was any follow-up, to make it sooner than later, because then, you know, things get a little bit foggy, you know, on the details. So I think that, you know, to being in this whole family-centered coaching, where we're looking at being very respectful of, you know, whom we are engaging with, and just that piece of taking the time and checking out any notes or file information and to recall. And then I've always done this my whole life, so it's just not, it's not a new tool that I've learned, but always just to try to be a little bit, to remember something on a personal level. You know, how are you doing today? You know, last time we spoke, you were going through whatever, and it just kind of brings a little bit of connectivity.
That's a wonderful answer, Kathy. Thank you.
So the next part of the checklist is how to get into a family-centered coaching mindset. And one of the tips we learned about in our training was to take the strengths-based approach with our participants. So think of 2 strengths that you will bring to the coaching session, as well as a couple of strengths that the parent or individual will bring to the coaching session. And this is a good place to realize that although we are the coach in this relationship, the parent is the expert of their life. They're the expert of their journey, and they do have strengths that they can bring to the table as well. So this is a good way to build off of the strengths off one another and build that relationship and pave that path towards your goals. So we'd like to open it up to the group again. What are some strengths you have recognized in some of your participants that have helped them get to maybe reach some goals or throughout their journey? And it could be a strength that they don't necessarily view as a strength. We've had someone in our earlier sessions had said that their like dedication as a parent, that has driven them to be the best parent that they can be and try to create the best situation for their child. And that's a huge strength. So what are some other strengths that you've noticed in your families or participants? Amanda, I see you talking, but we can't hear you for some reason. Okay. Thank you, though.
I worked with a very young mother, again, through the TPR consultation, who had struggled with addiction for years, which was the reason that her child had been removed from her care. When I met with her, she brought a sponsor with her from her halfway house, recognizing that she wanted a support system there in the room with her. But I would say she recognized, and what I felt was such a great strength, was she recognized that she was not in a position in her life at that moment to care for her child. I thought that was very profound for her to acknowledge that while she is still in recovery, she is not able to care for her child. And she was very open and honest throughout the meeting. And I just really continue to reinforce what a strong person she was. And really, like I said, at being such a young age, being able to recognize that she was putting her own child's needs above her desire to care for them when she knew she couldn't at that time.
Yeah, I think that's huge, and not a lot of people would come to that realization. So that's amazing. So another one that we heard that we think is important to recognize and, you know, to relay to your participants is just showing up, because when they come to us, they're coming to us for help, and they may be at a pretty low point in their life. And for them to even show up and admit that they need help is huge, and that's a strength in and of itself. So that's important to recognize as well. So another important piece of entering into this mindset is self-reflection. So self-reflection can help you explore if you do have any hidden biases, maybe against race or gender or typical stereotypes. And although you may not realize or recognize a hidden bias within yourself, sometimes it's instilled within us without us immediately realizing it or recognizing it as a bias. Maybe it's the way we grew up, or the place in which we grew up, just our traditions, our family. It's just the way our mind is wired to create those categories in our mind. So we do want to take a couple minutes right now and have you practice self-reflection by jotting down some biases or some stereotypes. And it doesn't necessarily have to be ones that you hold personally, but maybe ones that you've witnessed or recognized just in the world that exist. So remember, this isn't a way to embarrass or criticize you at all, because like I said, everyone has these biases, and it could just be the way you grew up. And we're just wired as human beings to create those categories in our minds. So just remember, this isn't a way to criticize or embarrass or call you out or make you feel guilty. And Hilary and I will share some as well, some of our own, and then some we've heard in our past sessions. So take a couple minutes right now and think of some, and we'd like you to share. So while you guys are jotting that down some more, I'll go ahead and share mine. And it's kind of silly, but whenever I'm out in public, especially when I have my daughter, I feel like I have stereotypes against anyone and everyone. Even when I'm grocery shopping at Walmart, just that mama bear in me comes out, and I don't trust anyone. Like, I feel like I have a bias towards anyone that comes close to me. And I know that sounds kind of silly, but today's world, it's just so unknown, and there's just so much going on bad that you hear about. So I just get into this protective mode and don't trust anyone. And the whole point of self-reflection is to recognize those kinds of walls that you do put up, and move past them in order to enter into that equal partnership with your participant or your families, and realize that it could have some effect on your interactions with them. So that's the whole point of this. And I think Hilary will share hers now.
Yeah, so when I first became a caseworker, which was like 6 years ago, I had a very eye-opening experience. I was raised that if I saw a penny on the floor, I'd put it in a piggy bank, or any, to save your money. That's how I was raised. So entering into a workforce of being a caseworker, I had some participants or families that would get extra money by working a couple extra hours or a bonus, or somehow they get some money, and in my mind, they would spend it on the silliest things. So, which was 100% wrong, because who am I to say what they spend their money on? And I don't know what, the only time I spend with them is maybe an hour for a meeting. I don't know what goes on the rest of the day or even within that week. So to them, maybe it was like a mental health relief going to the casino because, spending that money, they needed to do that. Or when girls get their nails done, that's like a feel-good thing for them, and it could be like a mental health thing. But when I first started, I was like, what are you guys spending your money on? Like, what happens if your refrigerator goes bad, or if your car breaks down? Like, aren't you saving for that? But really, that wasn't important to them at that time. So I was judgmental in the beginning, being a caseworker, which is wrong, but it was an eye-opening experience for me.
Would anyone like to share theirs, please?
I will say that I'm right there with Hilary. So I started my casework experience at the Fayette County Assistance Office. So I worked in welfare. I worked the front desk, so I encountered every client that came through the door there. And I would question, like, why, you're working, why do you have a shut off notice for your electricity? Why do you have, a shut off notice for your water? Not putting myself in that situation. We're all raised differently from some of our families, and we have a hard time putting ourselves there. And it wasn't really until, because I worked Fayette County, Washington County, Greene County, and then I worked at SCI Greene, and I worked at domestic violence. When I was a counselor of domestic violence, that's when I really was kind of like, whoa, some use money as a coping skill, shopping, going, getting their hair done. We just really never know what somebody's going through, that comes and sits down with us. And when they share part of their journey with us, it really opens our eyes to that experience, and not judging them. But I think we all have had those kind of bias. You have a new iPhone sitting on my desk, why are you sitting at my desk? But you just never know how they got it, where they got it from, why they have it. Some agency could have given them the phone because they're a victim. So that's kind of where my biases go. I try not to now, but 10 years ago when I started, I was in the same spot.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. There was a lot of great ones that came up. Some of them were parenting skills. A lot of us go into the homes of our participants or families, and some people parent differently than you did or do. So sometimes when you hear a mother speak at her child or discipline them in a different way than you would, you're like, well, what are you doing? But it works for them. You know what I mean? So who are we to judge? We're only there for an hour, so we don't know what goes on in the home. We hear about it maybe, but we truly don't really know what goes on.
I just wanted to add to, those cultural biases are, and it is, it's when you're first starting out, as a new caseworker, and you're coming from what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And it's just over time, and then, the listening, all that reflective listening, all those skills start to kick in, and then you do see, and your eyes are wide open then, because you do realize that, what is for one person, and that big TV where, when I first started out, we had a little, little TV go in the homes, and it was real important when people got their income tax checks to get these great big TVs. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, where's your children's books? Where are, like all those little important things that we think about for parenting. So, I can definitely, hear from the examples that I can relate to those too. It's good conversation.
Yeah, I think we heard a lot of, like, we were kind of nervous about this section just because it can be an uncomfortable topic to be like, oh yeah, this is what I think. And, it's hard to admit that sometimes, but we've had a lot of really good feedback in this section. And I think one of the bigger ones that I think we've all experienced, maybe all thought at some point, is that people in poverty are lazy. They don't want to work. Like, we hear that from so many people, maybe friends or family, or maybe we even thought it at one point. But really, when we work with the families we work with, our eyes do get opened, just like Kathy stated. Like, we get to know these people, and we get to know their situations. And what we've said in these past sessions is maybe by the time they got to us, they're in a low point, but maybe they're strides from where they came from. We don't know their situation. We don't know what they've been through. And when they come to us, we need to really be that sounding board and that cheerleader, and not tear them down at all or pass these judgments. We really need to build them up and show them the confidence that they have. And one of the reasons self-reflection is so important is because family-centered coaching has such a strong emphasis on equity in this coaching partnership. So once we can recognize the different stereotypes that exist in the world and maybe within ourselves, it can lead to a more of an appreciation for what our participants go through, the different challenges and barriers that they may face in their lives. It's really vital to go into these coaching sessions aware of those biases that we may hold. And it's equally important to understand the effect that they have on our participants and our families, because they are affected by it. And remember that it's not about embarrassing you or making you feel guilty about having these, because like we said, everyone has them at some point. It's not about making you feel guilty whatsoever. It's just really about finding those internal influences that may impact your relationship with your participants.
So the next section is about preparing your space for a meeting. And as we prepare to meet with our participant, we just want and ask you guys to prepare to devote your entire attention to them. So in order to do that, one of the tips we've learned was to clear and organize our desk so it doesn't look as cluttered. We want the participant to feel comfortable and calm in a meeting, and the appearance of a cluttered desk or messy desk can add some chaos to the situation. Have you ever been in a meeting with someone before and you couldn't find the paperwork? With me, my desk is messy. I've cleaned it up a bit since taking this training, but to me it's organized. But when somebody walks in, they're probably like, oh my God, what a nightmare. So I had everything organized, I thought, but I couldn't even find a pen one time because my desk was a tad messy. So this training helped me prepare for the meeting and open my eyes to possibly what other people would see when they walk in. And as silly as it sounds, it could add some doubt in the participant's mind. So cleaning your desk will allow for less distractions for the both of you. Another tip that we got was to eliminate distractions from our computer, and our phone could also help. The email alerts from our computer and phone can not only distract you, but can distract the participant that you're meeting with. And they might actually think that you're too busy and not focus on the reason why they're there in the first place. So another helpful tip is to create an agenda for the meeting. And that way you just make sure you hit all talking points in the meeting that you want to discuss. And if you don't get through the whole list, then you have that list for the next meeting. And by having an agenda, you'll seem more prepared and dedicated to the participant and their situations. So right now, Liz and I are going to ask you guys to take some time to create an agenda. Think about a participant you have and the next time you're going to meet with them, and to create a small agenda for us. And I'll give you guys about 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll discuss them. Okay, I'll give you guys about another minute and then we'll share. Okay, so would anybody like to share their agenda that they created? And if you could, will you also answer if you felt that it was beneficial to create an agenda? Please, somebody volunteer. I don't really want to have to pick on anyone.
I'll go. So again, I'm just going to utilize the termination of parental rights consultation service. I can tell you right off the bat, I like that I wrote down an agenda. I typically don't have a written agenda in front of me when I do this service. I've been doing it for almost 15 years, so I kind of have it down pat, but I do like having it written sitting here so that I can make sure I don't miss something. So my agenda is introductions, and this is more me introducing myself to the participant. I provide them with my background as far as working in child welfare and the termination of parental rights process, how long I've been doing this service. Then I would move next into explaining to them that I would be preparing a report for the court and gaining their approval by having them sign off on an authorization to release information form, giving me their consent to release that report. Honestly, I have to release it anyway, but I do feel like this is just really good rapport building with the participant. Next, I obtain information regarding their attorney so that I can provide their attorney with a copy of the report as well prior to the hearing. Our next step is offering the participant the opportunity to share their story, how they became involved with CYS from the time that maybe the first allegation or first report was received, all the way up into where we are now today, as far as the situation with their child and the pending termination of parental rights. After they share their story, I offer validation, mostly just repeating back what they have offered to me to make sure that it's accurate. This next stage, then I talk about the difference between the voluntary relinquishment of parental rights and the involuntary termination of parental rights, and what both of those mean for any future children that parent may have and their involvement with the Children and Youth Service Agency. Oftentimes at that point, once we discuss the differences, I will proceed with reviewing the grounds for termination, the involuntary termination that are listed in the petition. Oftentimes, a participant will state that they do not want to review those grounds. I just met with a parent 2 weeks ago that said, I know what I did and didn't do. I don't need to relive that. So we spent more time talking about the voluntary relinquishment, as that was where this parent was leaning, and just answering questions about that, because the goal is to help them to make that decision, not to guide them either way or provide them with recommendation, but to give them all of the information they need to make the best decision for themselves. So after that, I offer to answer any questions that they have. And at the conclusion of the session, I let them know, prior to your hearing, we have the ability to meet as many times as you would like. I make sure they have my phone number to call me, my email address, so that we can schedule additional sessions. And that concludes it.
That was really good. I'm just gonna call you out. I think what you do is crazy. Like I give you so much credit for what you do. I don't know. I could not do what you do. So I give you a lot of kudos for doing that. That's wow.
Thanks.
But
Thanks, Hilary.
I like you touched base on two of the things. So earlier in our sessions, we we had somebody from CCF, and they've been there for 7 years, 6-7 years. So I thought it was important. What they said was they don't necessarily always have to have a concrete agenda. She had a mental agenda, which I think is almost just as important. As long as you have an agenda walking into a meeting and have talking points and you want to touch base on everything, and then if they don't hit something on the agenda, then it just leads to different talking points. Me personally, I'm a list maker, so I like to have talking points and an agenda. Another one that somebody had mentioned was they write down an agenda because their enrollment is so huge that they can't miss a piece of paperwork because that could throw off the whole enrollment. So that's why creating an agenda could also be very beneficial.
And I want to point out that I've really enjoyed hearing from CCF this week and their agendas, because I feel like everyone who's shared from CCF has been different, and it's just been really cool to learn that, because one of the things we really like about these trainings is that different service areas are in each session, so everyone kind of gets to learn about each other's service area and kind of breaks down those silos within the agency. And I think it's been really cool to learn some of everyone's like kind of day. Someone had said something about playing a board game with their kiddos. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I love that. So another helpful tool to prepare for the meeting is to gather all the paperwork and documents that you'll need for your participant, which is something I'm sure a lot of people already utilize. But maybe you haven't met with them in a while, or they're new to Blueprints. So this is a good opportunity to kind of familiarize yourself with their situation. If they're in Cap 60, you can look over their background or their involvement with Blueprints. If you know what applications they'll need to fill out, you can get those out and ready, mark where they need to sign, so that doesn't take up a big chunk of time. If you can think of another program at Blueprints that they would benefit from, you could have that information ready to present to them, or any community programs that you think that they would benefit from as well.
So from this training, a tip that I had found out most useful was asking permission. And this is a helpful tip. By asking permission, you're opening up the door for the participants and families to be vulnerable. And you're also opening up a door for them to trust you. While you're taking notes in the meeting, we need to reassure them that it is for your own knowledge, so you will not forget any important details that they're telling you. So Liz and I are going to do a sample scenario for you guys, and she's going to portray a participant named Rhonda, and I'm going to be the coach, okay? So good afternoon, Rhonda. How's your day going?
Hi, nice to meet you. It's actually not very good right now. I'm having some trouble with my finances, and I'm not able to pay my rent this month.
I understand your struggle, Rhonda, especially in these uncertain times. Would you mind if I took some notes during this meeting so I didn't miss any important details that you're telling me?
Yeah, that's fine.
So I see that you're struggling with paying your rent. Do you have any income?
Yes, I have some limited income.
So would you feel comfortable telling me how much your income is and what your expenses are?
Yeah, I don't mind. I only work part-time, and I do receive some state assistance, so I make around $15,000 a year.
Okay, great. So we can actually start to work on building a budget for that income and work towards getting your rent paid. Are you okay with this plan?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay, so looking back on that conversation, when I told her I understood her struggle and asked if I could take notes, it was a way to build that first step of trust in the relationship. And I wanted to let her know that I was taking notes so I didn't miss any important details, which shows a sense of dedication to the participant as well. I also asked her if she felt comfortable telling me her income situation and what her expenses were. Participants coming to Blueprints may feel vulnerable and may struggle to open up about their financial situations. I would like to touch note that income is needed at Blueprints. I mean, obviously we need that information, but it's such a softer way to go about it by asking them if they would like to provide their income rather than telling them to provide their income. So that was just a tip also. And as you guys are taking notes, you can ask permission if they would like to be referred to the budgeting coach. you can help them with their expenses. And if they agree to it, you can forward all that information that you took, the notes on the expenses and the income, and you could forward that along with the referral. So this actually helps the whatever coach you're sending it to, because it helps them not ask the same questions over again, because to a participant, it could feel like we're belittling them, or it could really like lower their self-esteem. And obviously we don't want that, and we don't want to lower their confidence. And this can also help with a warmer approach handoff that we're doing with Blueprints agency-wide as well. So does anybody have any questions about asking permission? It's pretty straightforward.
So here's a screenshot of the resource checklist again. You can find this tool on SharePoint under the Family Center Coaching tab under Documents. And we also emailed it to everyone last Friday, so you should have that. You can start maybe a folder on your desktop about Family Center Coaching, because we'll be sending a lot of tools your way, so you'll want to have quick access to those. We do want you to download this and start to utilize it if it's applicable to you, just so all bases are covered, and we start to enter into that family center coaching mindset agency-wide. So just to go over what we discussed today, step 1, prepare for the meeting. We talked about different ways to get focused on your upcoming meeting, clearing and organizing your desk to create a better atmosphere for your participant, eliminate distractions such as your phone or laptop, draft notes or a to-do list so you can revisit that after your meeting, create an agenda for the meeting so you touch on all bases, and asking permission. Like Hilary said, this is a good way to put the participant in the driver's seat in a small way. So we know today's lesson was pretty straightforward about preparing for the meeting, but does anybody have any questions about anything that we discussed today? No. We would like you to try to use the Ready to Coach Today checklist before our meeting next week, if possible, just so we can gather some insights from that and how it went, if you found it useful, so on and so on. So that's all we have for today. We would like to let you guys know that these first 2 trainings have been kind of, easing you into it, but next week we're really going to get into the depth of family center coaching. It is probably going to take up the full hour next week, and we're going over 2 of the bigger tools, I think, next week. So it's going to be pretty interactive, and we're looking forward to it. So we hope you guys have a great day and a good weekend.
It's good seeing everyone.